And that takes us to the next question. Why does an opposition party seem to accept to hold primaries or adapt to the primaries, or are they just doing it differently? But then we have to also bear in mind, I think there's a very big dilemma in Uganda now, that there's so many constituencies and it seems just not enough candidates. You would have thought. Because if one party has to field candidates for every single constituency in Uganda, that's going to cost them a lot of money. And I think we are beginning to notice a trend where a lot of the opposition parties are not trying to go for everything. They are just concentrating on specific geographical areas. And this can be said about the DP, and this can be said about sort of UPC. So that in its sense, it limits the whole purpose of democracy and the whole purpose of multi-party politics. But I'll leave that for you guys to come in with your comments. So Charlie, if you can kick us off, please. Why do you think the opposition don't seem to hold primaries, and probably comment a little bit about the issue of too many constituencies, please?
So I don't think it's true to say the opposition don't hold primaries, because I think the FDC primary is yet to come. It's going to come. I'm not quite sure about the other parties, but I'm pretty sure they've got their own structure, and assuming there are more than one candidate within a constituency, then there's going to have to be a way of selecting out which candidate would be the best preferred by the party to stand in that constituency. I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. Unless there is only one candidate, then of course there's no point holding a primary, because that candidate would have gone through plain sailing and not challenged. So,
I mean, if I can just interrupt you there, it's interesting because if we think of Gulu West now, Gulu City West now, there's two strong DP candidates, and where there are no primaries, then you start to
who is the candidate? Who is the candidate?
I think Tony, what's his name? Kitara Tony is DP and Leander Kumakechi is DP. So then, where there's no primaries, then you begin to see the strength of the Godfather politics at play.
You see, the thing is, some of these points that we are expressing are not the authentic positions of these political parties. So you may find that Leandro Komakech might be the anointed DP candidate, but then Tony Kitara might not be. He might be standing as an independent, because we have not had any official communication from the Democratic Party.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make there is, in a situation like that where there's not been a fair primary, then it raises the question of, okay, if you're going independent, are you then still entitled to use the party colors and the party brand to kind of back?
So look at it this way. We have a critical stage in politics in Uganda at the moment where there are so many different changes, and I'm sure the voters have even failed to keep track of it. Now, we know what has been happening within the DP. DP is very weak, and there are only very few people who now ascribe to it. So for the leadership who are currently in DP, I'm pretty sure they are not going to rock the boat and lose any more members who are of substance. It would be better if Tony Kitara, even if he chooses to stand as an independent, it would be better for him to go ahead and stand. And if he passes or is elected, then at least DP could try and talk to him while he is already in parliament, yeah, to see if he can advance some of the ideals of the DP. The same applies to Leandro Komakech. I believe that the DP actually look at Leandro Komaket as their preferred candidate to stand in that constituency. I'm not quite sure about Tony Kitara, even though both of them are true and authentic members of the DP. Yeah, but of course, both of them cannot stand in the same constituency at the same time under the same party. So the only way they can do that would be for one of them to put themselves forward as an independent candidate. And what I'm saying is, if that was to happen, it's happening because of expediency, because and also because of the weakness of the DP structure right now. But the DP, it's like saying two of your best students, you want one of them to be recognized as somebody else's student. Yeah, you are not going to accept that. You're going to want somehow to find a way of embracing both of them. But of course, you can't if you want both of them to stand in.
But they do have the option of saying, okay, one of you go to Gulu East.
It's a choice that they have to make because maybe they've looked at it. I think they're both wanting to stand in Gulu East, isn't it? Which is Badegi, no, which is Peje.
No, they both wanted to stand, I think, in Gulu West.
Gulu West, where Mapenduzi.
Where Mapenduzi is.
I see, right. Because
So
I thought they have a stiffer competition there, and the chances of them splitting their votes for DP is much higher there than if they were over on the other side. But I think maybe they have calculated that the demographics in the other constituency, East, is such that obviously most of the voters would not go for DP, but the other alternative candidates. I mean, this what we are discussing here also applies to.
It does apply to NRM directly because when you now turn to NRM.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it also applies to Moalu Tuomoy, because Moalu Tuomoy, when he came back from the States, he had actually been a previous DP cadre. Yeah. So I thought he was going to stand as a DP candidate, but I was surprised to see that his poster doesn't bear any DP insignia. So that tells me that during the discussion as to whether he was going to stand for DP or not, somewhere along the lines, the discussions broke down, and he has now decided to keep distance with the DP.
No, he's got his grievances with the DP, and we have talked about it with him before. He's got his own personal grievances with the DP, which goes back years because he's always been trying.
I think
so it's not something.
Pretty much these political godfathership, whereby, so that's the reason. That's the reason he decided to go independent. So
yeah, I'm not at liberty to comment on that because I've discussed with the gentleman about these issues. So I'm not gonna comment on that, unfortunately.
I think most of the issues surrounding Moalu Tuomoy is well documented. He was a previous member of the DP. He had wanted to stand for member of parliament previously, but I think the discussion broke down. That's why he left to be a RDC in Lira. But when he left, he didn't leave in good terms. So, you know, and from Lira, obviously, when he left being an RDC, he left and went to the States. So now coming back, obviously, he has had to find a way of bridging the gap and getting back into the DP, which is not easy to do in a short space of time. So the only alternative is if he still wants to stand as an MP, he would have to stand as an independent. But I think the bigger question that you asked was, why do opposition parties find it difficult to hold primaries? I think for me, the dilemma they have is partly because they are very disorganized currently. This especially applies to the DP. They're very disorganized. They haven't got any structures to speak of. Their leadership don't know how to what message to send. So even the voters who would otherwise be loyal to the DP are completely, you know, they're none the wiser. They don't know what message is coming from the Democratic Party. And actually, most of the Buganda subscribing members of the DP, they have anyway hemorrhaged the party and gone off to NUP and People Power. So to be honest, DP is only standing more as a name than a party, to be honest. But I think if we are to apply your question uh, to the FDC, we will see that at least with the FDC, there's going to be primaries held. There may be competition in some constituency. I don't think those competition will be as strong as what we have seen in the NRM. The reason why there's been strong competition in NRM is because to be a flag bearer for the NRM means you will benefit from funding which comes straight from the central coffers of the NRM system, and as we all know, the NRM is using the national treasury as its own funding. So your funding.
I beg to differ on that, Charles. I beg to differ on that. The NRM has a very strong base of donors. Now the issue is Ugandans need to realize the NRM is operating at the level of Western politics now. There are businessmen who put money in the NRM, and these businessmen get contracts in the end. It's no different from what goes on in the UK. It's no different from what goes on in America. Harry, you will agree. So this notion that they're using the national treasury, I think is something we need to distance from. And let's not forget, they have a very strong, what is it called? There's a company that is registered that invests in a lot of things. And it, in a sense, seems to be like a party company. I've just forgotten the name now. It's Uganda something, but they've got their footprint in almost everything in Uganda. So it's they've gone from looting the national coffers to sort of self-funding because of the level of organization they have. And this is what a lot of people are missing about the NRM. This is what a lot of people are missing.
If I may come in there, I mean, it's no secret that that the government doesn't distinguish between, and when I say the government, I'm actually talking about the NRM government. They don't distinguish between what is national and what is party. They don't distinguish that. Only when it suits them will they remember that. Why do I say that? First of all, look at it this way. We have had their primaries, right? Now, what we are having these primaries in the midst of COVID-19, and what does it say? There are strict guidelines as to how many people should gather in one place. Now, what have we been witnessing? We have been witnessing government ministers going around gathering people, which is totally against the standard operating procedures. We have seen members of parliament, NRM-based, campaigning openly. And obviously, when they're talking with loudspeakers, people gather to listen to them. And the people who gather to listen to them haven't got, masks on and so on and so forth. So we can see that when it suits the NRM party, they will not budge. They will let their candidates do whatever it takes to send the message to the voters. But what about people like Bobby Wine, who wanted to come and speak in a radio station in northern Uganda? He couldn't even leave Kampala. So you can see the double standards I'm talking about. And now, when it comes to
those are some of the issues we were supposed to look at when it comes to the issues with the primaries, really. But if we can just stick with what we're dealing with now, why the opposition don't hold primaries, and then
so I was just giving you an example there to show that when it suits the NRM, they are definitely going to take full advantage of the resources of the nation to propagate their policy and also their message. We have seen people like, there was this disabled member of parliament who is supposed to represent the disabled as well in Gulu. He was, his photo was taken with new 50,000 shilling notes, bundles and bundles of it. Um, where does this kind of funding come from? From an MP who, you know, just a while ago didn't have money.
No,
And
no,
all
no.
of a
But
sudden,
the reality is, Charles, the NRM doesn't start funding any candidate until they're successful in the primaries.
okay.
So all
So the
through,
point is,
you have to
the point
fund
is,
yourself to go through
okay,
the primaries.
that's
That
fair
that
enough.
is the
But where
policy. But the more important issue we should be worrying about now is because there's a new policy where they say if you fail their primaries, you're not allowed to stand again as an independent.
we will
Now,
have a
these are
look at
some of
that.
the issues I wanted us to come to and address. Will they enforce this or won't they enforce this? Now,
Well,
when it comes to funding and how candidates find money, let's not be too presumptuous and think when you see somebody with a wad of money straight coming from the NRM coffers. Because some of these people are rich. They have been in power before. They have invested wisely. And they're not ashamed to show it to you.
even
So
people
it's
like
not,
Boss Nick,
let us
even people
avoid
like
this
Boss Nick.
situation whereby when a child makes a mistake, the parent is automatically blamed, which seems to be the problem we're having here when it comes to General Museveni. It's almost like every time anybody associated to government commits a crime or makes a mistake, we're too quick to blame the parent.
That's
Now
how it is.
you are a parent. If you took that away from the government infrastructure and put it on in a family setting, we could find that you've done everything in your power as a parent to make sure your child turned out all right. But
No,
they
that's
just don't
true.
listen. They just
But
don't listen. So
what we are looking at
what
is
we
a
cannot do
structure.
then.
We are actually looking at a structure. We are not looking at just an individual, and we are also looking at a pattern.
I know
So
what you're
when we,
saying.
hold on a minute. When we are looking at a pattern, and the pattern keeps repeating itself, then you know you have to draw the right conclusion. We cannot say, oh, we have seen 5, 10, members of parliament with new bank notes of a similar quantity, and then you fail to draw the right conclusion. To me, that doesn't make sense.
No, but you've mentioned the one. I haven't seen anybody else with it. I've seen some in Western Uganda. A lot of them are very powerful businessmen as well. So I've seen that in Western Uganda. But that is an election malpractice, and that's what we're supposed to come into. Because I fail to understand why then people who are blatantly practicing election malpractice don't get stopped right there and then. Because if you're coming and showing voters a pile of money and giving them money on camera, this has been documented on camera, then you're sending the wrong signal to Ugandans. And this is why election has become so expensive in Uganda. And the poor cannot just afford it anymore. And on the other side of the border, in the north, candidates are trying to fundraise from the voters, which has got its own issues. But if we can move on to Harry, please. Why do you think the opposition don't hold primaries?
When it comes to opposition, we look at, if you see opposition, the size of positions we are talking of the non-ruling party. So there are so many political parties whereby if they would come under one umbrella, we would see primaries. We would see primaries, say like we would have a geographical area, say Kampala and Kampala Central Region. You know, almost each political party has a stronghold around there. So if they're under one umbrella as a block, they'll try to contest as primaries at where there's, say like for Kampala would see Nyanzi and what's that lady's name? Shamim. Yeah, that would be like a primary for opposition. But being disorganized, not being under one block, we won't see primaries because most oppositions are kind of like regional centered, or they have spots in whatever regions, with the exception with FDC that had almost taken 3/4 of the country. But with also limited size and resources, we would see fewer, or we will see fewer, or we will never see primaries, because much as there might be candidates in a certain district, you find one is too weak, not even to rally. So there will be less chance of us seeing oppositions going for primaries. And another reason, oppression from the ruling government, not giving a chance for any stronghold oppositions to campaign. So those are one of the major reasons. Because even just a mere gathering, they don't want them to have a sit-down meeting. Before you know, police is there. Or before you know, is it what was that rule that they put for against gathering, where you have to go, you'll be penalized with that law of order management, the order management law.
Public Order Management Act.
Hmm.
So I think you make a critical point about the oppression from the ruling party as well, and also the fact the disorganization of the opposition. But I think if I can start by addressing sort of the disorganization of the opposition, it almost appears to me you're kind of suggesting a coalition would suit them better. And then they would be able to select the best from their different parties to fill forward. That means the strategy would be the entire opposition filling in one candidate, which would add value, but that, in a sense, would only serve the purpose of sort of like, we're coming together just to get rid of the regime. Now, then you will still remain with the problem of, okay, what happens after the regime is ousted? They still need to continue to hold primaries within themselves. And I think for me, really, I've been debating this, and I've consulted and talked to a few people, and bearing in mind the benefits of primaries and the intended purpose. I think some of the opposition just avoid the primary, really, because, like Charles, you raised rightfully, and you said in the primaries, people want to know who you are, where you're from, what you've done, So it's a lot easier to avoid that scrutiny, I would have thought, but they do it very cleverly. Then you see a situation where candidates are going through that are not even local. Candidates are going through that are not even that very experienced in politics. Candidates are going through that cannot really do much in parliament. And I think money is a factor as well. These parties have failed to organize themselves in terms of funding. I mean, you cannot just rely on donors all the time. You cannot rely on well-wishers all the time. I would have believed as a party you should be able to have some assets and some things to back you up. I mean, we know the UPC have Uganda House. The DP, I don't know, they could have. Obviously, there's that government, the money that government these parties, for even being there. But then I think the other issue is probably fear as well, because the primaries because they build this illusion that they've got so much support. Now imagine if they went to primaries and that exposed them that actually the grassroots support is not as strong as you make it out to be. So I think there's an element of fear and perhaps a lack of information as well. Perhaps they just don't see the benefit in the primaries. They just don't see how it helps to build political candidates, how it ensures continuity in politics. And the less other people know, the better for those that are sat there, really. So yeah, but a major factor as well is the oppression of government. And with this COVID-19, the way the rules are being applied, kind of like Charles, you said, they apply the rules. It's almost like a different set of rules for a different party, which is very unfortunate, really. If we can move forward to